Hey everybody, welcome to Evolution Now Project number 29. This episode is brought to you by Golden Rock Media, a digital marketing agency specializing in revenue generating content. I'm your host, Damien Chinappi, alongside always JJ Wolf. Our guest today is an entrepreneur. He deals with business systems and strategy to increase revenue, referrals, and retention. It's our pleasure to welcome to the Evolution Now Project, Ernesto Mandowsky.
Thanks, guys. Happy to be here.
Good to have you here.
Absolutely. So let's kick it right off. Ernesto, what got you into business?
Got me into business. Ooh. Well, it started with getting into food, getting into restaurants. I wanted to own 6 restaurants when I was 18 years old, and that has been my mission uh, since then. I threw a party one night, was able to get 2,000 people in a nightclub, make 10 grand, and feel this amazing rush of energy. And I said to myself that night, like, this is the kind of energy I want to fill my life with, hosting people, having fun, bringing people together, partying. So that's when, 6 restaurants and hospitality became kind of my North Star.
Wow, that's really cool. I mean, this sounds like a major success for a first event there, 2,000 guests, 10 grand. Pretty good.
Yeah, it's the importance of partnerships. My business partner was a DJ, like a house DJ, and he was fairly popular across different schools. So we knew lots of promoters, and we also managed to find a nightclub that could host that that capacity. That was also nice and not like a rundown warehouse. So when people hear like a great name, a great venue, and like the right people involved, it just kind of catalyzes the energy, the momentum.
So let me ask you, out of that 10K, how much of that was profit?
Oh, that was all profit. That was the take home.
Not a bad
Yes.
rip for a first. And then so you do this thing, you have this rush of energy, you have this, that's tremendous success if you've never done it before. So from there, did you look at your DJ partner and kind of be like, all right, we got something here? What was the play after that?
I did it again and lost money second time. Um, so my party planning dreams kind of got put on pause, or I reshaped. Said, hey, I want to focus on restaurants in particular.
So what incited your interest in the food industry and in restaurants and in entertainment?
Growing up, my family, we have different parts of us living in France, Peru, Colombia, Argentina, Brazil, and we'd get together once or twice a year. And I always remember, like, when we were younger, we'd always have this, like, the living rooms was always the food, like dance parties. They'd play samba music, and there was always like this real good vibe of being together. And so when I was 17 or 18 in that year before, right before I threw that party, I had met a restaurateur, and he told me that he owns 6 restaurants in Paris. And after I graduated high school, I went to Europe to backpack, and I actually went to his restaurants, and it was such a cool experience. I said, like, I want to do this. I want to be this. So that kind of like that became the North Star from that moment.
You saw a lifestyle that inspired you, and you said, "All right, this is what I want to set
That's
my
what I want
sights
to.
on." Yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
exactly.
nice. Now that's quite cool to hear how international you are. It sounds like you're very multicultural, and with a name like Ernesto, which is more Latin sounding, and Mandowsky, which is a little bit more European, I can only imagine what that cultural mix might give to you as a perspective on the world.
Yeah, it's kind of I think we're all multicultural. Maybe it's not countries or languages, but we all have a very unique set of experiences that really is expressed or can be expressed through the work that we do, through the podcasts that we produce, through the books that we write, through the services that we offer. And it's kind of like, my invitation, my mission for the world is to kind of help people identify, like, what is that unique intersection of skills, of insights, of experiences that they have And how can you take that unique essence and then express that in a way that people like really recognize that, like, oh, that's Ernesto's thing, that's JJ's thing. You know, it's so cool when you could like really integrate like all of your being into the work, into the product that you are creating in the world.
Great.
I love earlier you said like your North Star was get 6 restaurants. That's a lofty goal. So did you lay out like a plan for yourself, or did you just start just going? Were you kind of like a madman attacking a forest trying to cut it down to build like a city? Or were you like, no, let me take some time and really articulate a detailed plan step by step? What was that process like?
Well, I watched The Secret, and if the movie The Secret, on the book The Secret, if people who don't know what that is, it's a book that talks about the law of attraction and manifestation and creating a vision board. And the extent of my planning was build a vision board with a couple of photos on it. And one of the photos was a picture of a restaurant, and a picture of University of Florida. So when I went to school, there was no culinary like major, no hospitality school at UF, and I did engineering. And so I was really passionate about numbers and analysis and connecting the dots. And so I chose systems engineering. And after 2-3 years, I was so deep in the science and the Excels and like so much the analysis that I kind of lost sight of that North Star of the restaurants. And so I had to tell myself, like, look back at that vision board and listen around me for the opportunities that were available. So when I got an internship in New York, I asked a friend of mine for a connection to anyone in hospitality, and they connected me with one of the biggest nightclubs in New York. I don't think it's open anymore. It's called One Oak. People in Miami like the Live of New York, and I was able to take what I was learning in school through my systems engineering courses and actually apply it in the nightclub. I was able to build for them like a CRM that keeps track of CRM is a customer relationship management tool. And we were able to like build a digital tool to keep track of their VIPs, what they were ordering, what bottles, what nights of the week they would go to. And it was a terrible like first product. It like barely even worked, but I actually like was able to take this passion for hospitality and restaurants and these skills and systems engineering and kind of bring them together. And that was where the new North Star kind of started to shift a little bit away from, oh, I want to own 6 restaurants to, oh, I want to do restaurants and technology. And that, that goal or that, that vision started to change a little bit, but kind of in the new direction that gave me even more energy than the prior one.
There's a lot there to experiment with. I mean, I'm sure you got some interesting data to look at when you were gathering data on the VIPs and the bottles and the days of the week. But early on in the development, what exactly to create and how to make it function at a high level or create a lot of value. We've seen so much. I mean, I worked in some restaurants when I was younger, and I remember, the touch screen POS, it was always laggy, and it barely functioned at all. It didn't do anything high level, but now we've seen the transformation to the Square POS, the point of sale, and where put your credit card in, some simple things that seem simple, but I'm sure were more complex to design. But like, for instance, you put your phone number in, you're automatically enrolled in the loyalty program. And so you just based on your credit card, these kinds of things. So where has your journey come? Like, where are you at now? How did you go? So you want to create restaurants, but then you went to university, systems engineering. You created an experimental program, gathering data, creating a custom CRM for a restaurant, for a club in New York. And then where are you now, and how did you get here from there? Hey guys, hope you're enjoying this episode of the Evolution Now project. These days, every business needs to have a solid online presence, and it's a good idea to work with an agency that knows how to harness the power of social media and content creation. This episode is sponsored by Golden Rock Media, a digital marketing agency specializing in revenue-generating content. They provide social media marketing solutions designed to harmonize with your business goals to bring you the results you're after. If you want more customers and more leads, Goldenrock Media can help you to develop a content strategy that will bring your business to the next level. Goldenrock Media helps businesses by producing scripted content, ad campaigns, live event video capture, as well as online courses. Find out more in the show notes here in the description or at goldenrockmedia.com. If you mention Evolution Now Project, you can sign up with them for a free 30-minute marketing consultation. Now back to the Evolution Now Project.
Yeah, well, this was 12 years ago. And I'm not going to go through the whole, like, what happened each year, but basically at a high level, I had this North Star of restaurants and technology, and that led to a job with Deloitte, which is a very large consulting firm, very dry in consulting, and I learned amazing experiences with project management. Then I found a job in restaurants, in a restaurant group. I worked at a startup. And then most recently, before starting my company today, I worked at a restaurant group called The Palm, which they have one in Boston, actually. Almost 100-year-old steakhouse that all of the who's who in America would go eat there. They make the deals. It was like kind of the back room where all the celebrities and politicians would get together. And along this journey, I had this insight around what I was mentioning earlier around we all have the opportunity to express our unique identity through our products and services. I had this epiphany that we're all just like bees. And so when bees are out in the world, you see them kind of floating around flowers. What they're doing, they're collecting nectar, they're collecting insights from the ecosystem around them, just like we as people are collecting these insights from these experiences we put ourselves through. And then the bees are pollinating these flowers, just like we are taking these lessons to each other as professionals, to different jobs, companies, knowledge transfer, innovation is happening. And then the bees go back to the hive to create this honey. They survive off of that honey. We go back to our hives ourselves, and we kind of create this unique value proposition that we can then give back to the world. Companies are doing that. It is their unique value proposition. So when I had this insight, I said, wow, like I must tell this story to everyone. Like everyone needs to understand that it's okay to do all these things. It's okay to feel a little lost. It's okay to, take this course that maybe it's not going to add up to anything in life, because like at the end of the day, it all is a part of who you are. And so I wrote this book, or I started writing this book. And before I would publish it, I would have this opportunity with the Palm. And fast forward, we sold the company like right before COVID started. I said, damn, I need to finish my book. Like, this is my life's work. I got to get it out there. So when I finished the book, I said, this was a beautiful story of the North Star and the restaurants and the passion and all that stuff. But this was just an excuse to not actually be an entrepreneur and not try to go for it, because I had been really afraid of doing it my whole life. And so 3 years ago, I started my company. It's called CPD Advisors, and CPD stands for cross-pollination design, because inside of these companies, everyone is cross-pollinating. The founder is everyone's doing it. The only difference between bees and people, bees know exactly how to communicate. They know exactly how to tell each other where the honey's at, where the flowers are at. And people, we got the ego and we got feelings and emotions, and we don't have really effective communication strategies or workflows or techniques. And so that's where we kind of come in, and we help people really optimize how they're communicating so that their organization can create and share that honey with their ecosystems, with their worlds. And so that's what I've been up to the last 3 years. And my North Star has, of course, shifted away again from restaurants and tech. Now to my North Star is helping people share their honey with the world.
Nice. That's a beautiful tagline. Helping people share their honey with the world.
Thank you.
So cross-pollination, that makes a lot of sense, because people do have like you said, emotions, and everybody's unique. People have had their own experiences, their own life path, their own formation, and so helping people to be able to communicate better is one of the absolute most effective ways to help a company thrive as a hive. Yeah.
Wow. You must be in marketing.
Yeah, I'm in marketing, and I've got there's a creative thread somewhere in my being. You familiar with Juan Betancourt?
I am.
Yeah, yeah.
I am.
So with Human Intelligence, you're not related to that project, are you?
No, and what they do is great with culture.
Yeah,
We're not culture trainers or designers.
sure,
The idea of helping people communicate, that's a very broad word.
sure,
And
sure.
where I kind of, and I cut you off. Were you
Oh
gonna
yeah,
ask me about
I
like
was just
how does
yeah,
it?
yeah. Well, I'm just because I know a little bit about what that company, and I actually made one of my first animation projects a few years back. I made an animation for a company that is still in the early phases. I think they might have abandoned the project. They had a really cool concept. They're called Who Type, like who are you, Who Type, and they had a thing where you could like it's basically a social media platform where you could go in and you could select like kind of what mood you have that day, and based on your personality, you could see, okay, I'm going into a meeting with Sally, and Ben's going to be there too, and then together, if Sally is feeling up and
Pissed
Ben is feeling
off.
low, that means that I should play more of the listener as opposed to more of the initiator or something like that,
Oh,
you
that's
know.
interesting.
And so I just wonder when you talk about communication, you talk about teams, cross pollination, like CEOs or the design team or the engineering, the system, people moving from one company to the other in this kind of communication. I'd love to hear a little bit more about it from a practical sense, what it is that the company does. Because it sounds very cool, cross pollination design, so that people can
Thank you.
share their honey with the world. It's very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you. So communication is a big word, and how we kind of niche ourselves in that space is workflows, project management, CRM, automation. It's almost like the machine that is supporting the organization. So when a company sets a goal, I don't know if you've heard of the concept like OKR, or objective and key result. Like that's like the North Star of everything, right? Sometimes companies don't set goals effectively, or they're setting outcome based goals. They're saying, oh, we want to be at X revenue, or we want to be on this many shows, or we want to have this many clients. And they set these outcome based goals that are totally out of their control, stressing everyone out in the organization, putting everyone's esteem in the result versus the action. And so, like that right there, when you're setting those types of goals, like every other activity downstream is already being set up for failure, because you can't really control any of that. And so it starts with goal setting. It continues on with, like, I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Sullivan's Who Not How concept.
A little bit.
Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan wrote a book called Who Not How. It's like, hey, you don't have to be the expert on everything, but someone in your network probably knows how to do that thing much faster than you, can help you get that result much faster. So it's about that relationship building. How do you keep relationships? We're both of us are in Miami Made together. Are you actively looking at the 47 people inside of that group who you want to connect with, keeping those diligent notes? Are teams doing this, or are they using 17 different Google Sheets and they're communicating across Slack and WhatsApp around like the latest update on this? This is just how I kind of distinguish communication using tools versus like a culture index or a human intelligence, understanding that, oh, JJ's Myers-Briggs is ENFT and mine is IFTJ. It's less those like personality and more just like, hey, if we're working on a team together, let's get real clear on what actions we have to complete by what deadlines, so that we can achieve this higher order goal here. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Harmonizing the visions,
Yeah.
making sure that you're tuned in so that you're seeing the same. It kind of harkens back to the vision board concept.
Yeah. So that everyone has the same vision board, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Say vision board is an execution plan.
Yeah, speaking of vision, so what role, Ernesto, does visualization play in your life? Do you believe, obviously you believe in the power of manifestation. but how much visualization do you use in your personal life, and how much do you communicate that when working with clients?
Um, I don't daydream. I don't some people meditate and let the sight insights come through meditation. How I view visualization, it's more of like a passive thing that happens when you're on walks or when you are in spaces of silence. You can hear what your brain or your body is trying to tell you. But there's two approaches. Like that's kind of the top down, like outside in. I also inside out, like I set quarterly goals that I'm striving to hit. And quarterly goals being like action-based goals, not outcome-based goals. Like I know that this quarter I need to produce 13 newsletters. I know that I need to produce 13 podcasts. Now, maybe like I'll get some insights while I'm on a walk around like what guest I want to interview or something around that, but I'm like razor focused on my targets. And that's what I tell my clients to do. Like you have to set laser sharp targets that you are going to achieve, non-negotiable. And at the end of the quarter, it's not a problem that you don't achieve them, but it's an invitation to ask yourself, why didn't you achieve those actions? And that inquiry, that questioning is what most people do not do. They don't take the time to like analyze, hey, I said I was going to do 50 push-ups a day. Why didn't I do 50 push-ups a day? And that's just like the easiest low-hanging fruit for business owners to kind of really like hone in on why they're not getting the results they're supposed to be getting. They want to be getting.
Yeah, to review. And that's Damien is a big believer in that. Do you do it weekly or just monthly when you review your journal? So you do your entire year in January?
I'll do my whole year of January, but every week it's a good just a good check-in of like where I'm at goal-wise, where I'm at emotionally, what things kind of came up. Because like if I were to ask you, hey, what was last Tuesday like? You'd be like, I don't know. Or if you write those things down, you can kind of start to string together momentum where things can seem disjointed, especially if you're on your own, if you have a smaller organization, if it's just you. For me, it's just me, and then I talk to JJ. But yeah, that review it kind of, I don't know if this really fits together, but it kind of abstractly does. Review and follow up, right? So I know I saw a post of yours, Ernesto, about follow up, and one of my mentors always said, like, the fortune is in the follow up. And I don't know if you can speak to that level of persistence in your business. And the follow up question to that is, how much follow up is too much follow up?
Every business is different, but I think the post you're referring to is like when people attend a workshop of mine. Um, I my philosophy is you wanna just put as much power in your customer's hand, in your client's hands. So if someone attends my workshop and at the end of the workshop, like I have a feedback form and it's like rate the workshop 1 to 5 and what was your biggest takeaway and what could we improve? Like there's always going to be a question of every workshop will have a flavor of this question. Would you like to be added to our newsletter? Would you like to set up a follow-up call for more information? So my flavor is, are you interested in setting up a follow-up call, like a conversation for like a sales call? And so when someone checks that box and you hit yes, I have Zapier already take all the information and draft up an email for that person. So if you're doing a workshop for 150 people and you're manually doing that, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, like forget it. You lose the fortune. So why not use technology to push a couple of buttons and have the whole thing do it for you? So that's kind of like how I think about like following up. And maybe you don't have it automatically send the email because I know that JJ asked about, this particular, you do the last touch, and you send the email and what are you gonna, I don't think, you don't want to be annoying. So it looks a little different for everyone. I haven't for me, I send the email if they're interested in building a business system so they can do things like what I just described. Cool. I'm not going to chase you to like convince you why a business system or a marketing service or whatever service it is that you're selling, no one should chase anyone, because that inherently is like a scarcity mentality. And so, I'll be here when you're ready to talk. And that's it. And I think most entrepreneurs can take on like a confidence, a conviction, and what it is that you're doing, which would probably minimize their like scarcity and like, oh my God, I got to keep following up, or have a CRM follow up for you, but you shouldn't have to manually follow up with everyone.
That's a great example of just how important systems are, because there are, like, I think I just shared it the other day, but basically there's so many AI tools coming out. There's just every single day, because we basically got access to the infinite data sum of all human recorded history. Anything that anybody's ever said that exists on the internet is part of the data set. That's the way I look at it. Anything that's been written, any film script, any book, any message, it's everything. It's really infinite. It's hard to even fathom. And so it's important that, maybe it was Jesse Itzler. There's someone, there's the clip that I saw recently, which I really liked. The concept of is that we don't have to learn how to use every AI tool. And is AI going to replace humans? It's going to shuffle some people out the door that aren't uniquely talented or needed for certain processes. But it's just a matter of utilizing it and figuring out how to use some of these AI tools to offload some of your time. Like you said, you're not going to manually copy paste 150 email addresses one at a time, type out a form letter. You're going to use Zapier or some tool to create some kind of system for you so that you can just go in, check it, hit send, boom. Go in, no, don't need that one. Go in and just speed it up a little bit. What are some of your favorite tools that you use now? Zapier is one of them.
Zapier is one of them. Notion is like my end all. That's my ChatGPT. Like that is where my life is on Notion. My business, everything is on Notion. Are you familiar with Notion?
You know what's interesting? I'm actually very curious about Notion, because I was working on a project with a couple of guys, and they were all about it. And I when I looked at it, I'm like, it's a bullet list. I don't understand. There's probably a lot more to it than I even understand.
It is unbelievable. It's amazing, flexible databases that you can create whatever you want on it, content schedules, project management. I mean, my whole framework, everything that I mentioned, build it and manifest it through Notion. Tally forms is another great one. It's what I use to collect information ahead of time, data collection, also not a great automation tool. And then there's, of course, ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT. I use Midjourney. I use Canva is great. Canva has some pretty solid AI capabilities. And that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's pretty much it on my software. And that's the software that I help businesses set up. Something you said earlier, like there's so many AI tools. I think it's like crypto in the 2020, 2021, like, oh, I gotta buy these shit coins and figure it out and read the thesis. And it's like you spend so much time learning these things, and then the trend ends, and then it's like, why did I spend all that time learning all these tools? Like, just learn the tools that will solve your problems.
Just fucking learn the tools, man. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. So I want to ask you, Ernesto. I want to push your buttons a little, see what happens. What are you most scared of in life?
Just scared that this whole company thing won't work out for me. It's scary. It's scary when you're like trying, like you have these big goals and like the client's not paying the invoices, and creates real fear.
A lot of pressure.
To date, we're 21 days into February. I've generated $200 this month, and it's fucking mind melting sometimes, but you gotta still show up and do the work that you said you were going to do beginning of the quarter, and have faith that it's going to pull through. Like, yeah, I have $25,000 in invoices sent out right now. Can't really control when they're specifically going to push the button, but I can control the actions that I still take every day, even though the money hasn't come in. Just got to keep doing it.
You got to automate that billing process.
Well, that's automated. You got to automate tell the customer to pay their effing invoices process.
Right.
But yes.
So speaking of fear, that's a real thing. You got to make money. You're kind of out there swimming, and if you don't, you drown. When you feel like things get bleak, what's your inner dialogue? Like, what's the whole like you versus you? What's the inner dialogue? How does that go when you're kind of like, oh, can I do this? Is it like you should get a safe job or I told you this wasn't going to work? What's that inner dialogue like for you, Ernesto?
It's kind of sneaky. I spoke about this week, literally just everything I said, like, I don't know if this is going to work out. You can't make it in entrepreneurship. Like, you don't have what it takes. All the same self-sabotaging shit that we tell ourselves. And the way I sometimes don't even subconsciously realize, like, instead of taking the action that's going to move the needle to solve the fear, I start to take the wrong actions. I start to play with my Notion databases. I start to like build some zaps instead of, maybe picking up the phone, calling the clients, saying, "Hey, what's happening?" Um, so I realized that I'm taking the wrong actions when I'm in that scarcity uh, state.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I've been using this app too much. It's this thing where it rapidly feeds the viewer, the user of the app, it rapidly feeds them completely random emotions. It's called Instagram. And so when you're scrolling it, it actually it I think it's designed to actually fracture your attention and your focus so that it becomes impossible to actually take productive action on anything meaningful whatsoever. So I've been trying to increase my use of that app actually to ensure that I get nothing done.
What's this app again?
It's called Insta. Sorry, I gotta. It's called Instagram.
Instagram. Ah,
You like one picture of some chick in a thong, and suddenly it just bombarded, and you're like, oh my God. And then you like one food thing, and then that algorithm is such a bitch because it's like, it's scary. It's scary how much like it knows what your
it
brain's
knows you.
fucking knows you better than you.
And then it's like thong, hamburger, come see Gary V live in Miami, $99 ticket special. Buy now. Uh,
Yeah,
next
something
song.
about the thong plus cheeseburger equals Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know what it is. Salty, but So speaking of Gary Vaynerchuk, he's a New York guy, and it sounds like you had a strong chapter in New York. Earlier, I wanted to ask you where your first where you grew up and where you originated in the world, and then you got to New York. So where were you from? And then also I I got a follow-up question when you answer that.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Miami. I grew up here my whole life. I said this town is just full of rich people who like to party and go clubbing, and I thought there were no career opportunities here. And so I always thought New York is the place. New York's the spot with all the restaurants. I gotta head up there. So after college, I went to New York, stayed there for 4.5 years. And when I had that realization of wanting to write that book, and I didn't say this earlier, but going on a book tour and sharing this whole prophetic vision, the job with the Palm at that restaurant group actually moved me over to Washington, D.C. For like 8 months before I moved to Orlando. And then during COVID, I came back home. And so I'm a Miami boy through and through.
All right, he's a South Florida native. So New York, and especially Manhattan, is a zoo. I mean, there are so many wild things that happen in Manhattan. Are there
Yeah.
any particular memories you have of something happening where you're just like, I just can't, like, unbelievable or wild or strange or like scary moments you had being in Manhattan? Were you living in Manhattan?
I was living in Manhattan. Thank God I not really been in many crazy life-threatening situations or, fearful situations. I always was triggered when I'd see those goddamn bike gangs just like troll down Fifth Avenue or whatever, like on bicycles, like bicycles and electric bikes, just go. And it never made sense to me. And I see them in Miami also. It's just so weird, like why people would put themselves in that kind of harm. Um, aside from that, I mean, food restaurants are wild there. There's this one place called Sammy's Romanian where they literally sell you bottles of vodka inside blocks of ice. That was fucking awesome. There are so many restaurants in New York that just have like these crazy food experiences.
Okay, all right. There's some things there. I wonder if we keep on this topic, if anything will come to mind. Because I mean, I feel like you only have to be in Manhattan for 5 minutes to like see somebody half naked, to see somebody holding a knife to somebody or some drugs or something. But I'll take it. I'll take it. The e-bikes taking over the road. You know, I actually there's two things that happen in Miami. So there's critical mass, which is an loosely organized gathering of particularly bicycle riding enthusiasts. And then there's another thing that happens here, which is the moto groups that will just kind of take over the highway. So to touch on the critical mass, my first experience with a critical mass event was actually in San Francisco about 12 years ago, and it was the Halloween ride. So traditionally, it's like the last Friday of every month. But the idea is that you get together a critical mass of people on bikes so that you have enough people that you take over the road, right? Now, it's quite interesting. I mean, the roads they're designed for automobiles, but, you know, is a person driving a car a more valuable person than a person who's on foot? That's kind of a philosophical question, right? Because the roadways are for all people. So this is kind of, I think, some sort of the anarchy route of the critical mass. Let's take over the road. And I've ridden a few times. I think I did one in San Fran, two in Boston, and maybe two in Miami. And there is a thrill. There is a thrill because you get that many people together, and there's this feeling of freedom and camaraderie, and like, I don't know what it is about bicycles, but there's something about bicycles that just they ignite this sense of freedom in the human spirit. But then the other thing that happens, which is extremely dangerous and completely illegal, is there'll be all age from young teenagers to adults riding motorcycles and e-bikes, and particularly the dirt bikes is what's scary. Is like they'll be on the highway, and the quads too, the four-wheelers. And I mean, you being a South Florida native, you've probably seen this going on a lot longer than I have, because I moved down here just a few years ago. But then there'll be 50 or 100 guys, some of them wearing face masks, and I'm not talking about like little hospital masks. I'm talking about like full balaclava,
full on,
you know, like I'm about to rob your shit face masks, and doing wheelies, and then there's cops and sirens. And has that been going on since you were a kid in South Florida?
I didn't realize it. I would not have realized it. But that is exactly what I'm talking about. It was interesting philosophical question what you said about, like, you know, a car or a bike, like which is more valuable. In Colombia, in Bogota, on Sundays, they actually shut down like one of the main highways. Like the city shuts down one of the main highways, I think from like 8 a.m. to like 1 p.m. either every Sunday or once a month on Sundays, for bikes. And it's just like bikes and pedestrians and people walking down the street. And it's quite beautiful. It's quite beautiful. You see like so many people walking around using, you know, alternative transport. And I wonder, like, you know, where's that in Miami? Where is that kind of like
Espanola Way?
camaraderie?
That's where it is. The one block of pedestrian street on Miami. But there's a bunch of cities that have things like that. There's a few walking strips in different cities in America. Particularly one that I really like is the Gothic quarter of Barcelona. I don't know if you've traveled to Barcelona, but I was
young.
Yeah, if you've been to El Gótico, it's a corner of the city that's between the Ramblas and the beach, Barceloneta, and it's probably the equivalent of maybe 15 blocks by 15 blocks, where it's only pedestrian passageways. You know, they'd be considered alleyways, but there's no roads. It's just pedestrian access. And then there's a few roads that come across the blocks, but there's many, many, many walking alleys where there's no vehicles, you know, only bicycles and occasionally a motorcycle cop.
So just to mix things up, so you're married, Ernesto?
I am. Yes.
How'd you meet your wife? Was she a Tinder special, or did you meet her at a marketplace?
No, we actually met a long time ago. Our first picture is the night of that party that I threw, that I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. She was dating my partner at the time. Uh, but we went to college. We didn't know each other. Like we eventually like part ways, totally like lives went in different directions. And my partner also like, so, I mean, we never really continued. And when I was in Orlando and COVID started, she was also in Orlando. And it wasn't the Tinder special, but it was the Hinge. It was the Hinge special. So Hinge got us back together, and we got married 2 years later.
Nice. Hinge special. Yeah, you don't hear about Hinge too much now these days. Um, Interesting. So how much does having like a really solid partner help you navigate the uncertainties of being an entrepreneur? What is she like when you come home and you're kind of like, "Oh, I don't know what's gonna happen." Is she like the rock, or is she kind of like, "Hey, honey, well, you can always just get a corporate job."
No, she's definitely not. She has Middle Eastern background, Middle Eastern Latin background. She's quite the firecracker, the fire starter. And that's useful and not useful sometimes. But no, she puts the pressure on. Like, is this gonna work? Like, you got to make this work. I don't have a startup investor, but I have a wife who, and we both want to have a family one day. So it becomes less of like, men or women can like say, oh, my partner is so stressful about this. But when you actually just like look objectively, like, hey, can this thing support a family? You take the emotion out of it. It just becomes a lot more objective. Like, yes, it can, or no, it can't. And so it takes a lot of the emotion out of it. Emotion's so important. It's such a driving force. It's the inspired action to like get off your ass and do something. But it's also the thing that can completely derail you from whatever it is that you're doing. So you really have to find like the right harmony in how you manage your own emotions, especially
Yeah,
like with
the
yourself, with your wife.
emotionality, the heart, and the spirituality. I mean, it depends on people's direction in life. There's so many different ways to look at life, and I like that a lot. To think about what keeps us inspired and how do we keep our emotions in check when we're caught off guard or when things get off the rails. But it sounds like you said like she's like the fire starter. So does she push you towards your goal? Like if you're, maybe you'll say, I
Oh,
want to do
totally.
this, and then you'll kind of back off and she'll say, but wait, you said you were going to do that.
No, no, that I'm the integrity police, if anything. But she is encouraging. She's like, hey, you know, you did this, now do twice as much. Like she's always pushing me for more,
Right.
inspiring me to do more. Um, I'd rather take that than having someone who's like withdrawn from the process. Like oh, sweetie, it's okay, you'll just get a job in corporate. I don't need that. Like you kind of want like diamonds aren't made. Oh, sweetie, like
You need some
pops a
pressure.
diamond.
You
Like
need you need pressure.
it's millions of fucking pounds of pressure. Like you need the pressure.
Right.
So
So that makes me think of this question. What's one cliche that you hate?
cliche that I hate.
And you can't say diamonds are made under pressure, right? That's already
No, no.
that one's been used.
The answer is in the action. Like people ask, should I do this or should I do that? It's like I don't know. Take action. Like you'll find out.
Mm.
It's not so much that I hate it, but like I hate hearing it because I'll ask my friend like, "Hey, what do you think of this like video idea?" He's like, "I don't know, post it, see what happens." And like I hate hearing it. I really hate hearing it, but I know that like that is the answer. Like that's no one has feedback for you because like your journey, my journey, it's all totally different. And back to the honey thing, like our journeys are so unique that on like a dark side, like it can be lonely that you're on such a unique, lonely journey that you can't ask really, I can't ask you for help on like how to build a business systems consultancy because like you haven't done it. But on the flip side, like we're all together because like you have other experiences that you can share. So yeah, roundabout way, like I hate that my answer is in my own action. And like it's hard to ask people for feedback because their feedback is jaded by their own experiences.
So talking about advice and feedback, have you had mentors along your
Totally.
journey?
Yeah, mentors. I'm in training programs. I'm in all sorts of programs now where I'm learning, consistently learning from people who've walked the path. Not the
Right.
exact path, but similar paths.
Sure. Especially just even in the vein of entrepreneurship, there's a lot of lessons that are universal, when it comes to whether it's structuring your business, growing a team, setting goals, these kinds of things. So sorry, we have a little blueprint. We come up with some questions ahead of time, so I'm looking through it to see what
I
have
love
we
it.
hit and what haven't we hit.
I love it.
That mentor question is one of them. But was there a specific? It sounds like life has really inspired you, but was there any specific mentorship at any part in the process that helped, or are there any? Here's a question that might get a good answer: is were there any times in the process where you were stuck trying to take the next step, and what helped you get unstuck? What helped push you across the line? And it may or may not have been a person or a mentor, but what would you say
Well,
to that?
there was this guy that I guess he mentored me to some extent indirectly. He would read a book a week, and he was very successful corporate trainer, and was lecturing our class when I was in college. And someone asked him like, "Hey, how do you be our mentor?" He talks about like finding mentors, and someone said, "How would you be our mentor?" He said, "Well, I give this challenge every year. I offer 3 books. When you read the 3 books and come back to me to tell me what you learned, I take a meeting." And I read those 3 books, and I had the meeting with him, and it was great. And he's like, "So, what are you interested in learning next?" And I said, "Well, A, B, and C." He goes, "Great, read these 3 books, and we'll have our next meeting." And I did, and then we had our next meeting. I don't know if it was a year later or 2 years later. This was a while ago. But through that experience, I basically learned, like back to my earlier question, like the answers in the action. Like you have some problem you're trying to solve, like ask someone for advice, but don't ask someone to rescue you. Like that person will probably give you some work that you need to do, and do the
Mm,
work. Don't just bullshit my time, take a meeting, ask me for business systems advice, and then just never come back. Like go do the work, come back.
mhm.
Like everyone listening now, like that's like 10% of people like sign up and actually finish the course. Like do the
Right,
work.
right.
And why don't they? I mean, it's probably another podcast episode.
Sure, sure. When it comes to business, I really like the concept of MVP, uh, minimum viable product.
Yeah.
Like even say there's an event series that you want to create. A great example is make a splash page where you have a RSVP sign up and see if you can get people to RSVP. You don't even need to have a venue confirmed. You don't even have to have speakers confirmed. Test it out. Test out the
Sure.
concept. See if anybody will even sign up. Before you even sell the product, see if somebody will buy it. And if you
Correct.
do decide to test your systems and collect some funds, you could always return the funds. Oops,
Totally.
sorry, the product sold out. So here's your funds back, whatever it
Yeah,
is. You know. Um, so you host workshops at all?
I
Have
do.
you? Yeah. So talk about your first workshop that you ever hosted and the lessons you learned from it. And how has the
Oof.
process of running workshops evolved from that time when you first started doing it?
Yeah. Well, the first time I had the workshop, I kind of took the approach of when I threw my first party, where I looked for solid partners I like it was 6 hours. I spoke for 3 hours, and like my different partners spoke for 3 hours. So I really used that collaboration. We had 30 people live in person in Miami. And it was great. I mean, I think it was great, at least. It was a good first time. Um, I had done other workshops where I didn't have as good of a turnout. But what I've learned kind of inside of that process is that now my workshops, I host them virtually once a month, and they're on different topics. So sometimes you'll see speakers and trainers, they'll just do the same workshop every month, same topic. And I'm hosting the topics like sometimes people will focus on like this one metric, like, oh, do people sign up? That's an indicator of success. But for me now, it's like, hey, like if people come or don't come, I'm recording that workshop and I'm posting it on YouTube. And so like, and it's me practicing to speak. So like I'm showing up. So I'm not putting my esteem based on other people showing up. Like I'm showing up, I'm doing the work, I'm practicing to speak. And because I am a trainer, I'm building a training firm that's in line with my long-term vision. So like I'm focusing on like the metrics that are getting me close to that long-term vision, not, oh, JJ didn't sign up for my thing. I mean, 2 months ago, you probably had no idea who I was. And so maybe even if you saw me put up a page that seemed interesting, maybe you wouldn't have even like done it, even if you were interested in it because you didn't know me. So sometimes people throw up these landing pages or like they'll throw up content on Instagram or YouTube and they're so new to the algorithm or life that no one signs up. But people will be like, I didn't get any signups, so my MVP was a failure. And that's kind of like the dark side of MVPs or of like putting your success in the outcome. You know, you gotta show up and focus on the action, not the outcome.
I like what you said, like, it's practice. I get to practice speaking, and that's a very important contextual framework for any long-term vision. When you have the long-term vision of like, this is why I'm doing it because I know where I'm going to your vision board, it makes it a hell of a lot easier, and you can get a lot of meaning out of the output, not the outcome. And I like what Hormozi says. Alex Hormozi always says, you focus on the output. Your job is not to focus on the outcome. It's to focus on what you can do and what you can control. And that's always like the tangible work that you can lay brick after brick after brick without seeing results, knowing that the results will come.
Yeah, that's faith. I like what you said about output, not outcome.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we are coming up to the hour. We shoot for a 60-minute roll time, but we started maybe 5 minutes after. It sounds like you've got to jump. But this has been a really intriguing episode. We've been focusing more on the arts, and I love business. As you can tell, I'm feeling pretty animated now. I think my mint tea is kicking in. But I really appreciate your time, Ernesto, and it's really cool to tune in with you and learn a little bit about CPD, a little about your journey from Florida to New York and back. And it sounds like there's a few stones that we haven't turned over yet. So we'll have to keep in touch, and there's definitely some business questions I'd love to run by you at some point. So yeah,
totally.
Damien.
No, thanks for stopping by, Ernesto. It was a pleasure chatting with you, getting to learn a little bit more about you.
I had fun. I appreciated your questions.
Thanks. Where can our listeners find out more about you?
They can head over to freesystemscall.com. Basically, like, set up time. I encourage everyone to speak with me because like people are usually like, they're like, oh my God, business systems, I'm not really sure. So, come to freesystemscall.com. Let's have a chat. Let's see how I could give you some resources to take action. And otherwise, I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn, Ernesto CPD, across all of my platforms.
Well, thank you, Ernesto. Thank you, Damien. Thank you to our sponsor, Golden Rock Media. And you evolutionaries out there, hope you enjoyed this episode, and keep growing.